This morning I had a false OBE. Those are quite annoying. So I began meditating at about 3:05. Went through the indirect method where I do a series of sensory imagery techniques. So rubbing my hands in front of my face, seeing if I can see my hands, rolling to the left, and then taking a break and trying to fall asleep, then rolling to the left, then rolling to the right, then going around the room doing sort of what is sometimes called the target technique, where you try and touch everything and visualize it. Did that, 40 minutes of that, then went through Todd Akamesis's recent meditation, and then I began swimming, and I guess I was swimming for maybe another 10 minutes, and then I fell asleep. Began dreaming. In the dream, I slowly gathered more and more awareness until I got about a 90% awareness, where I felt like I was the dream character, and I was basically fully there, but I wasn't completely awake. I wasn't completely lucid because I couldn't remember that my body was here. I really thought I was that dream character. So I was awake as the dream character in the dream, and from there, that turned into a false OBE. So the false OBE was I was hyper aware in the dream, but not fully awake. And then the astral wind took, and then I said I'd like to go someplace interesting, and I began traveling in the dream to that interesting place. I began getting pulled to that interesting place, and then as I was gathering more awareness being pulled, the astral wind took over, and I didn't travel very far. I traveled downward again for a very short period of time, and then I entered into some very dark environment, and I was on the floor, looking at the floor. I could begin seeing the tile work on the floor, and then everything went black, and then I began feeling my arms being pulled by one or more beings, and then I began fighting them. And I'm thinking maybe I should have just maybe I should have just surrendered to the process of being pulled, because at the start of the meditation I did ask, as I've been doing the past several days, for any guides or helpers or etheric beings to help me become conscious and, have a fully conscious OBE. So instead of surrendering, I began kind of fighting them and flailing a bit. And then things were dark as that was happening. Slowly, them trying to pull me subsided, and my awareness in the space, I don't know if I was in the same space. I presume that I was in the same space. My awareness began congealing, and I was able to see fully around the room. It was something like a bedroom, still extremely dark. And I didn't feel as if I was vibrating at the same vibrational rate as the location that I was in. So as I began seeing, there was this being there, and then there was this being that was there in front of me, a male being. And, I got the impression that he wasn't all that nice. He didn't have all that great of positive energy around him. He wasn't there for my benefit or the benefit of others. And so then I directed loving energy toward him, because whenever there are beings around that, I don't feel that are all that positive and loving, I just direct loving energy. And as soon as I directed loving energy toward me, it disappeared. I began walking around the room. Shortly after I began walking around the room, a nude person walked out from a door. They didn't see me, and I'm like, okay, I'm now in this sort of room, and there's this nude person. So I don't know whether or not I was on the astral, or whether, I presume I was on a very, lower astral realm, and I wasn't vibrating at the same rate or exactly the same rate as that lower astral, or this was all just a the false OBE was all just a dream, and I was dreaming this. It was very hard to tell because my awareness wasn't very high, but my presumption was that I was on a lower astral and I wasn't vibrating at exactly the same rate. So I kind of felt uncomfortably being in this room with this new person. I felt like I was kind of invading their privacy. So I left the room and began sort of moving around the house, returned to my body, kept perfectly still, returned to the location, went outside, saw some kids playing, and it was at that point in time that I thought about my body. But I was as I said, I wonder where my body is. I couldn't remember that my body is here in the physical. Instead, I thought about my body being in the dream that I was having previously. So again, to me, this is known as like a false OBE. And so, yeah, I did not remember that my body was here in the physical in this recliner. Instead, I thought my body was the dream character in the former dream that I was having. And so I was outside and I saw the kids over there, then began walking around the area. Again, I had a goal for this session, but I completely forgot my goal because this was a false OBE and not a fully conscious OBE. Began walking around the area, returned to my body a second time, kept perfectly still, left my body again, returned to that same location. As I was walking around the location, this third time I began kind of looking back into the house, but from a different side, looking around the area, then returned to my body, and I could no longer, and it was about, I don't know, 5 something, 5:20, 5:30, continued to relax my body, kept perfectly still, but I could no longer return, and I felt completely awake here in my physical body. Then I began meditating for a short bit, and I've decided to wake up and record this journal entry. So it's really annoying when you fall asleep after doing all that time meditating, and then the OBE that you have is a false OBE, because it's like I don't know. It's just very annoying because you have a goal and you don't get to complete that goal because you never became fully conscious and it never turned into a full lucid dream. So these false OBEs, kind of annoying. That's all for this journal entry.